The council chamber of the Moonshadow Pack was filled with the weight of centuries, its walls etched with the stories of past leaders and warriors. Moonlight filtered through towering windows, casting long shadows across the polished stone floor, where history was written in the form of a mating ceremony. Selena Moonshadow had dreamed of this day for as long as she could remember. Today was supposed to be her day, the day she would become the Luna of the Nightfall Pack and seal the bond between two powerful packs. She wore the ceremonial white gown, woven with strands of silver, designed for the most sacred of unions. Her skin glowed with the ceremonial markings of her heritage, and her hair, braided with moonstone threads, cascaded down her back. The elders sat before her in a semicircle, their ancient eyes watching the sacred ritual unfold. Across from her stood Lucas Blackthorn, the alpha of the Nightfall Pack. His presence was commanding, and his wolf's amber eyes glinted with the weight of their shared history. It was supposed to be perfect. The ritual words, the bond, the joy. But as Selena met Lucas's gaze, she saw something she wasn't prepared for. Uncertainty, fear, regret. Her heart shattered as Lucas opened his mouth, and everything she had worked for, everything she had hoped for, began to crumble. Selena. Lucas's voice was calm, but the tremor in his hand was enough to betray his words. I can't do this. The silence in the chamber was deafening. Her world tilted. The bond, which had been promised to her since childhood, suddenly felt like ice in her veins. For a moment, the words hung in the air like poison, suspended in time. The elders exchanged uneasy glances, but Lucas's voice cut through their discomfort like a blade. I reject this mating, he declared, his words cold and final. I reject the bond between myself and Selena Moonshadow. Her knees weakened, her breath caught in her throat. The rejection was a blow she had not anticipated, a devastation too deep to understand at first. She fought to stay upright, gripping the edge of the altar for support as the room around her erupted in disbelief. But the true sting came next. Lucas's eyes shifted towards someone standing on the other side of the room. Her sister, Lily, the girl she had raised, protected, and loved. The girl who was now the source of her deepest humiliation. I came here because of duty, Lucas continued, his voice thick with emotion. But when I saw her, I felt it. The bond, the mating pull. Lily is my true mate. Selena's heart fractured. The world around her spun out of control, and for the first time in her life, everything she had prepared for, everything she had expected, felt meaningless. The elders were in chaos, their authority crumbling as Lucas's words weighed heavily on the room. Tradition demanded that the ceremony be halted, that further deliberation take place. But in that moment, Selena realized the truth. The bond between Lucas and Lily was undeniable. The tradition of the pack would bend to the force of a true mate's pull, no matter how much it tore the fabric of their customs. She walked out of the chamber, numb and broken, her white gown now a symbol of a future that would never be. Behind her, she could hear the whispers, the sounds of her father trying to smooth over the situation. But there was no fixing this. Her sister had claimed her future, and the world she had prepared for was gone. The rejection cut deeper than the ceremony itself. It wasn't just the public humiliation, the loss of her future as Lucas's Luna. It was the betrayal of Lily, the girl she had raised and loved like her own. The pain of it all, of being discarded for her sister, was more than Selena could bear. She left everything behind, the pack, the promises, and the life she had dreamed of. In her exile, Selena lived under a false name, trying to suppress the wolf inside her, keeping her identity hidden from the world. She never expected to see her future again, let alone the truth of who she was meant to be. But as the months passed, the whispers of her rejection traveled far, and they reached the ears of someone who would change everything. The aftermath of the rejection had left Selena broken. She had isolated herself in a small, human town, hiding from the very world that had rejected her. But even in her isolation, she couldn't escape the pull of the life that had been stolen from her. It was during this time of numbness that she met Darius, a man whose eyes saw through the carefully constructed walls she had built. He wasn't just any stranger, though. He was the Lycan King, the most powerful ruler in all of Lycan territories, and he had been watching her for far longer than she could have imagined. If you think no one should ever be left behind, rejected, or tossed aside for someone else's selfish choices, hit subscribe now. Only the manipulators and trolls would ever side with people like Lucas. So, if you believe everyone deserves a fair chance, comment, "I stand for justice," below. The days that followed her rejection were a blur of humiliation and heartbreak. It was as if the world had moved on, indifferent to the wreckage left behind. The Moonshadow Pack, her pack, had closed its doors to her, leaving her with nowhere to turn. She was abandoned, not just by Lucas, but by everything she had ever known. Selena Moonshadow, no longer the Luna in waiting, no longer the beloved daughter of the Moonshadow Alpha, was now just a ghost in the world. She could barely remember the days before everything had unraveled. All she had now was a name, a life she never thought she'd need to live, and a deep, gnawing ache in her chest that refused to heal. The small, isolated town of Hawthorne Falls was far from the world she had once been a part of. Here, in this quiet human town, surrounded by forests and mountains that seemed to stretch on forever, she was nothing more than a stranger. The humans who passed by each day didn't know her true nature. They didn't know that she had once been the future Luna of the most powerful pack in the region. To them, she was just Elena, a simple woman working at a low-paying job in the local inn. The Redwood Tavern was a modest building, nestled near the town's only highway. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough for Selena to keep her head down, enough to survive. She scrubbed floors, made beds, served food, and cleaned dishes. There was no magic in this life, no sense of destiny. There was no pack, no bond. There was only survival. But every night, as she sat alone in her small room above the inn, she could feel the ache of rejection gnawing at her. The bond Lucas had broken, the life she had lost, it clung to her like a second skin. Every morning, she woke with the heavy weight of it pressing down on her chest, and every night, the pain became harder to ignore. She had thought she would leave it behind, but it was always there, lurking in the shadows. She had tried to move on. She buried her wolf deep inside, suppressing its cries for connection, for the bond that had been torn away from her. She thought if she hid from it, it would eventually fade, but it only grew more insistent, pushing her to confront the truth. She would never truly be free of the pain Lucas had caused. It wasn't just the emotional pain. No, there was something far worse. The supernatural world had turned on her. The rejection had been broadcast across the entire pack network, and soon her pain became entertainment for the masses. Videos of the ceremony, of Lucas's rejection, were shared far and wide. On supernatural social media platforms, her face was smeared with accusations. Some messages were sympathetic, but most were cruel. "Is she not enough?" people asked. "What did she do to drive him away?" Others speculated about her looks, her personality, wondering aloud whether she was too weak, too plain, or too unworthy to be a proper Luna. It was a constant reminder. The world had witnessed her downfall, and they had an opinion. They were all watching. They were all judging. It was late one evening when Darius Vale first arrived at the Redwood Tavern. Selena had just finished her shift and was wiping down the last of the tables when she noticed him. He wasn't a man who blended in easily. He had an air of quiet power, of authority that seemed to radiate from him. His presence was undeniable, almost magnetic. He walked with a confidence that made heads turn, but he didn't need to flaunt it. It was just there. In the way he moved, the way his eyes seemed to scan the room with purpose. He was tall, his dark hair falling just past his shoulders. His eyes, a deep, penetrating shade of blue, studied the room with a calm intensity. There was something about him that unsettled her, yet she couldn't quite pinpoint what. Maybe it was the way he looked at her, or perhaps it was the feeling that, for the first time in a long while, someone was truly seeing her. But Selena did her best to avoid him. She kept her head down, staying out of his line of sight. The last thing she needed was to draw attention to herself. Darius returned the next night, and the night after that. Each time, his presence seemed to fill the room in ways that made her uncomfortable. At first, he said nothing to her, just ordered his drink, and then sat in the corner, eyes watching her every move. She pretended not to notice, but she could feel him, always watching. It wasn't until the fourth night, when she was cleaning the bar area, that he finally spoke. "You're not human." His voice was soft, but the words carried a weight that made her freeze. She slowly turned to face him, her heart racing in her chest. She tried to dismiss it, to hide the truth of who she was, but something in his eyes made her hesitate. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he added, "but you're not fooling anyone." Selena's pulse quickened. She had been so careful, so determined to keep her identity hidden, but somehow, this man, this stranger, seemed to see right through her. She forced herself to stay calm, her voice low as she answered, "I'm just trying to live a quiet life. Nothing more." "Quiet, huh?" He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "And yet you can't escape what you are. You're not just running from the world, you're running from yourself." Selena's eyes flickered to the door, to the outside world that felt so far away. She wanted to escape, to run again, but her legs wouldn't move. It was as if he had trapped her in place. Over the next few days, Darius continued to return, each time more persistent than the last. Slowly, he began to wear her down. He never pushed her too hard, never asked for more than she was willing to give, but there was always a question hanging in the air. Why was he so interested in her? Then, one evening, after the tavern had closed, Darius finally gave her the answer she had been avoiding. As she locked up the doors, he followed her outside, his footsteps echoing in the night. "I know what you've been through," he said, his voice low and steady. "I know about Lucas, about the rejection, and I know that your world has been shattered. I've been watching you, Selena. I've seen your strength, your pain, and I think you've suffered enough." Selena swallowed hard, her throat tight. She had to force herself to speak. "Who are you?" she whispered. "Why are you even here? What do you want from me?" Darius's gaze softened, but there was an unmistakable power in his stance. "I am Darius Vale, the Lycan King." His words hung in the air, thick with authority. "I know you. I know your story, and I know that I can offer you something Lucas never could. You don't have to stay here, hiding from your past. You have a place by my side. You deserve a future I can give you." Selena took a step back, shaking her head. I don't need anyone's pity. This isn't pity, Selena. This is the offer of something real. A chance to be who you were meant to be, to leave the shadows behind. The weight of his words pressed down on her, and for the first time in months, she felt a flicker of hope. A chance to escape this small town, this life she never wanted. A chance to move forward. Darius's next words sealed the offer. I want you to come with me. To leave all of this behind. To come to my estate. To stand beside me. You'll have a place by my side, as my Luna. You won't have to hide anymore. Selena's heart raced. She felt the pull of his offer, the call to something more. Could she trust him? Could she leave everything behind and take this chance? Or was it just another trap? But looking into his eyes, she saw something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. With a shaky breath, she nodded. I'll go with you. In that moment, Selena knew that her life was about to change. Whether for better or worse, she would have to face it. But one thing was certain. She was finally taking control of her future. The journey to Darius Vale's estate had been a blur, a whirlwind of flights, private jets, and quiet conversations. But now that Selena stood at the gates of his estate, the weight of everything hit her in full force. She had left everything behind, her pack, her family, her old life. It was gone in an instant, replaced by a future she never thought she'd have. As the car rolled through the massive iron gates, Selena's breath caught in her throat. Before her lay a sprawling mansion that seemed to stretch endlessly into the horizon, a harmonious blend of modern luxury and ancient, timeless power. The estate was surrounded by vast gardens, their manicured beauty showing the immense wealth and authority Darius held. It was an estate that spoke of centuries of history, where every brick, every stone carried the weight of tradition. The mansion itself stood like a king on its throne, its tall spires piercing the sky, its windows reflecting the golden light of the setting sun. Selena could feel the power in the air, a pulsating energy that thrummed under her skin. She had never seen anything like this. Nothing in her old world compared to what she was seeing now. This was the heart of Lycan society, a place ruled by the most powerful alpha of them all, Darius Vale. Selena's heart raced. Was she ready for this? Was she ready to embrace this new life? To stand beside the Lycan King as his Luna? Or would she crumble under the weight of the expectations placed on her? The car finally came to a stop in front of the grand entrance, and as she stepped out, a deep sense of awe settled over her. Darius stood by the entrance, his dark eyes watching her with that same calm, almost unshakable presence he always had. He was the Lycan King, and now he was her mate. "Welcome to my home, Selena," he said. His voice rich with authority, but softened by something warmer. "This is where your new life begins." Selena nodded, taking in the grandeur of the place, trying to steady the storm of emotions swirling inside her. She couldn't deny that a part of her wanted to be overwhelmed by it all, but another part, the part that had grown strong in the face of rejection, pushed those fears aside. The first few weeks at the estate were a blur of lessons, protocols, and endless training. Darius wasted no time in preparing her for the life that awaited her as his Luna. He taught her about the politics of the Lycan world, the way alliances were formed, and the rules that governed their society. She learned about the ancient traditions that had shaped the Lycan territories, about the power structures that had endured for centuries. Each lesson was exhausting, At times, it felt like she was drowning in information, trying to absorb it all at once. But Darius was patient with her, guiding her through each challenge with a steady hand. He never once belittled her, never once made her feel small. Even when she struggled, when the weight of it all became too much, he was there, supporting her, encouraging her, teaching her that she was capable of more than she thought. The training wasn't just about politics and power. Darius also taught her about the role of a Luna, a partner to the Alpha, a woman who wielded influence, who stood by his side not just as his mate, but as an equal. She was learning how to lead, how to make decisions that would affect the entire Lycan world. In the evenings, Darius would take her out into the gardens, where he would teach her how to tap into her inner power. It was in these moments that she felt the closest to him. As his hand rested gently on her shoulder, guiding her through meditation or combat training, she felt the bond between them deepen. There was no denying it. This man was her mate, and his power was now a part of her own. She began to change, to adapt to her new role. The confident, powerful woman who had once stood before Lucas, ready to claim her place as his Luna, was beginning to emerge once again. She was no longer the broken woman who had fled her past. She was becoming the Luna of the Lycan King. The first major test of her new life came when the Lycan Council convened for the first time since her arrival at the estate. Alphas from all across the territories would gather, each one bringing their pack's representatives to discuss matters of great importance. And, as fate would have it, Lucas and Lily would be there. Selena's heart twisted at the thought of seeing them again. She had tried to block them out, to bury the pain of Lucas's rejection deep inside her. But the truth was, she had never truly let go. She still felt the sting of being discarded for her sister, still felt the weight of the betrayal. Now she would have to face them in front of the entire Lycan world, and they would have to face her rise to power. The day of the council arrived, and Selena stood by Darius's side as the alphas gathered in the great hall. The air was thick with tension as each alpha filed in, nodding in respect to Darius. Selena, dressed in a gown that reflected the Lycan King's insignia, felt the weight of the eyes upon her. She was no longer just a woman, an omega from a small pack. She was the Luna of the Lycan King, a woman with authority, a woman with power. And then, Lucas and Lily entered the room. Selena's breath hitched in her throat as her eyes locked with Lucas's. He was standing at Lily's side, his tall frame filled with confidence, his eyes betraying nothing. His face softened the moment he saw her, and for the briefest of moments, she saw something flicker in his gaze. Regret, maybe. But it was too late for regret. Lily, too, met her gaze, but there was no recognition in her eyes. She had moved on, fully bonded to Lucas, fully entrenched in her new life. The hurt from the past few months surged up in Selena's chest, but she kept her face neutral, her expression unreadable. As the council meeting progressed, Lucas's attempts to meet her gaze were constant. Selena could feel the weight of his remorse pressing against her, but it didn't affect her the way it once had. He had made his choice, and now it was too late for apologies. Later, after the council meeting, Lucas approached her in the quiet of the estate's garden. His eyes were full of emotion, and his voice was low when he spoke. "Selena," he began, his tone heavy with regret. "I was wrong. I shouldn't have rejected you. I should have waited for the bond to settle." Selena's heart twisted, but she stood tall, refusing to let his words break her. "It doesn't matter, Lucas. What's done is done." I can't change what happened, but I need you to know. I regret my decision. You were always meant to be my Luna. I was just too blind to see it." Her gaze hardened. "You were never truly mine to lose," she said quietly, but the words cut through the air like a sharp blade. You chose her, and now I am choosing me." The finality in her words silenced him. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Darius's presence loomed just behind her, a protective figure that seemed to cast a long shadow over the exchange. Selena felt the reassurance of his proximity, and in that moment, she realized just how far she had come. She had risen from rejection, from humiliation, to stand beside a king, a true mate, a partner who valued her strength and who had chosen her, not out of obligation, but because he saw the woman she truly was. Throughout the council gathering, Darius never once let go of Selena's side. Every time Lucas tried to approach her, every time an alpha tried to question her authority, Darius stepped in. He was her shield, her protector, and his presence made it clear to everyone in the room. Selena was not to be trifled with. Darius's power was undeniable, but it was the way he treated Selena that set him apart from the others. He valued her. He treated her as his equal, not just in title, but in spirit. And as the gathering came to an end and the alphas retreated to their quarters, Selena knew that her life had been irrevocably changed. That evening, as the council concluded its discussions, the night air in the gardens of Darius's estate was thick with unspoken words. Selena lingered outside, walking along the cobblestone path as the moonlight filtered through the towering trees. The air was cool against her skin, and the gentle rustling of the leaves gave the moment an eerie, tranquil feel. Darius, always close, had retreated to the shadows as she asked for some space, needing to process the whirlwind of emotions and revelations that had hit her. She had never imagined her reunion with Lucas would come to this, her standing tall and unyielding while Lucas, once her intended mate, stood before her, broken with regret. She never thought she would see him like this, with regret in his eyes, no less. Lucas's rejection had set her on this path, but his regret, in the quiet moments that followed, was like a bittersweet reminder of what could have been. Could she have been happy with him? In another life, in another reality where things hadn't fallen apart so easily. But that life didn't exist anymore. "Do you want to talk about it?" Darius's voice broke through her thoughts, smooth and quiet, like the night itself. He had been standing there, watching her from a distance, but now his footsteps echoed softly as he approached her. Selena shook her head, turning to meet his gaze. There was no need to talk about it. Lucas had already said everything he needed to say, and in doing so, he had made it clear to Selena that her future wasn't tied to him. "There's nothing left to say," she murmured. Her voice felt strong now, despite the remnants of the sadness that still lingered. "I have my own path to follow." Darius nodded, his presence reassuring, comforting. He stepped closer, standing beside her, his body a solid wall of strength. "And your path will be glorious. It already is." Selena didn't respond, but the weight of his words settled in her chest, grounding her. She knew she wasn't just walking into a future alongside Darius. She was claiming it. Her new life, her power, her destiny. It wasn't something anyone could take from her. Not Lucas. Not anyone. As the days turned into weeks, the council gathering went on, with delegations from every pack across the territories present. But Selena knew she was more than just a witness to these political maneuvers now. She was at the very center of them, learning how to use the authority she had inherited alongside Darius. During the many meetings and discussions, Darius never once let her out of his sight. He was her constant protector, always present, always watching. It wasn't just about the physical protection. It was the way he made her feel powerful. His respect for her was evident in every glance, every word. He never treated her as a lesser. Instead, he sought her counsel, encouraged her voice, and made sure the entire council knew she was his equal. Throughout the days that followed, Lucas attempted, on several occasions, to approach Selena. But every time, Darius was there, intercepting him with a calm but commanding presence. Lucas's eyes would flicker with frustration and regret, but Darius didn't allow him any space to try and make amends. It was a subtle act of dominance, but it was also a message. Selena was no longer anyone's second choice. She was the Luna of the Lycan King, and nothing, or no one, could take that from her. Selena watched, fascinated by how effortlessly Darius managed to maintain his position. His authority, his sheer presence, was so overwhelming that no one dared challenge him. Even the other alphas who may have questioned her role seemed to hesitate when they looked at Darius. He was a king in every sense, not just in name. The Lycan Council had convened for a second gathering, this one more formal and larger than the last. The great hall was filled with pack leaders, warriors, and dignitaries from every corner of the territories. It was a momentous occasion, one that would define the alliances for years to come. But for Selena, the true significance lay in one thing. Lucas and Lily would be here. She had been prepared for this, in a sense. Darius had prepared her for the politics of the Lycan world, for the games that would be played in these halls. But nothing could prepare her for the visceral, raw feeling she had when Lucas and Lily walked through the doors. It was surreal. Lucas, now fully bonded to Lily, stood tall and proud beside her, his alpha energy radiating from him in waves. His eyes sought hers briefly, but when their gazes met, there was no anger, no bitterness in his expression, only guilt, regret. It was as if he wanted to speak to her, to apologize, but the weight of his own pride kept him silent. Lily, on the other hand, appeared as though nothing had changed. Her face was cold, impassive, like a mask that had long been perfected. She moved beside Lucas with an air of arrogance, as if to remind everyone of her new status. Luna of Nightfall Pack, bonded to Lucas. For a moment, Selena felt a pang of something sharp in her chest. There was pain in the past, in her betrayal, but there was also something else, strength. She had moved on. She was no longer the woman Lucas had rejected. She was the Luna of Darius, and no one could take that from her. Not Lucas, not Lily. As the council meeting continued, Lucas tried to catch her gaze several more times, but she avoided it. She could feel the weight of his gaze pressing against her, but she remained steady. She wasn't the same person she had been before. She didn't need his approval. She didn't need his regret. Throughout the evening, as Lucas attempted to approach her yet again, Darius remained ever present. His position beside her was unwavering, and each time Lucas even moved toward her, Darius subtly placed himself between them, his large frame acting as both a shield and a symbol of protection. Selena noticed how Lucas flinched each time Darius intervened, but she also noticed something more. Lucas realized, too late, that he had lost her. She felt a strange sense of satisfaction in that realization. Lucas had been the one to discard her, but now he saw the woman she was becoming, and he wasn't able to take her back. Selena stood tall, her back straight, her posture regal. She had worked so hard to get here. This was her moment, her life, and she was no longer going to hide in the shadows, not even for Lucas. Later that night, as the council adjourned, the gathered alphas began to filter out of the hall, some lingering to continue their discussions in private. Darius took Selena's hand in his grip strong yet gentle. They walked through the grand corridors of the estate, their footsteps echoing softly against the polished floors. "It's done," he said softly, his voice filled with satisfaction. "They've seen it now. Your strength, your power, They know what they've lost. Selena glanced up at him, her heart swelling with admiration. I never thought I would be here, she whispered, her voice tinged with awe. I thought I would always be someone else's shadow. Darius's gaze softened, and for a moment, the king disappeared, leaving just a man beside her. You're not someone's shadow, Selena. You are your own light. You always have been. The words resonated deeply within her, and she felt something shift, a sense of clarity, of purpose, that she had been searching for. She wasn't just the woman Lucas had rejected. She was so much more. I'm ready, she said, her voice steady and resolute. I'm ready to lead. And for the first time in a long while, Selena realized just how far she had come. The pain of her past had led her here, to this moment of triumph. With Darius by her side, she was no longer the broken woman who had fled her pack. She was the Luna of the Lycan King, and she would carve her own path. Comment. I stand with the strong, if you're ready to see how Selena becomes the Luna she was always meant to be. The air in the great hall was thick with tension as the Lycan Council convened for the second day of the gathering. The grand chandelier above cast its light across the room, illuminating the faces of the most powerful alphas in the Lycan world. Selena stood beside Darius, her heart steady and her gaze unwavering. The room was filled with whispers, with eyes that darted between them, assessing the power that radiated from their bond. Darius's hand rested on her lower back, possessive and yet somehow gentle. He had been her rock, her anchor, from the very first moment she had stepped foot on his estate. Now, here she stood, no longer the broken woman who had fled the pack in shame. She was his Luna, the woman at his side, and the council hall would know it. Every eye in the room turned toward them as Darius rose to his full height, his commanding presence silencing the low murmur of conversation. It was time. The moment he stood, there was a palpable shift in the room. The alphas, though powerful in their own right, instinctively bowed their heads. Darius was the Lycan King, the ruler of all territories, and when he spoke, it was with the weight of centuries behind him. His voice echoed through the hall, calm and firm, carrying with it the authority of a king. This gathering is not just a meeting of leaders. It is a declaration. His eyes swept over the room, pausing briefly on each alpha, each representative. We are here to solidify the future of our territories, to make alliances and plan our path forward. But there is one more thing I must declare. Something that cannot be left unspoken. Selena's heart began to race in her chest. The room was still, the weight of Darius's words hanging in the air like a storm on the horizon. She had felt it coming. She had known that Darius would make a move to claim her publicly, to make it clear that their bond was not just one of convenience or politics. It was something deeper, something unbreakable. Darius turned to Selena, his gaze softening as he looked at her. A flicker of emotion passed through his eyes, a recognition that only she could see. This was their moment. Selena Moonshadow is not just my Luna. She is my true mate. Darius's words rang out like a proclamation, their weight far more significant than the bond of an arranged union. She is the one I have waited for. The one chosen by the moon goddess herself. Selena's breath caught in her throat. The murmurs in the hall grew louder, and she could feel the eyes of every alpha on her, weighing her, judging her. But it didn't matter. She stood tall, her chin raised, her heart full of purpose. This was her moment, not just as Darius's Luna, but as the woman she had become. Darius's words held the room captive, silencing every voice. He reached for her hand, taking it in his and pulling her closer. The bond between them flared to life, the invisible force that connected them solidifying in front of every watching eye. "Selena is my true mate," Darius continued, his voice reverberating through the hall. "And with her at my side, I will lead this kingdom into a new era. Our bond is unbreakable, and with her, I claim the future." As Darius spoke those final words, a wave of power seemed to ripple through the room. It was not just his declaration that caused this reaction. It was the bond between them, the raw, undeniable magic that surged through the air. The energy was electric, the room vibrating with the weight of their connection. Without another word, Darius turned toward the altar at the center of the hall. It was a simple structure, but its significance was profound. This was where the strongest bonds in the Lycan world were sealed. Here, in front of the council, in front of the alphas who had gathered, Selena and Darius would perform the bonding ceremony. The elders, positioned around the altar, began to chant in the old tongue, their voices blending with the rhythm of the magic in the air. Darius's hand never left Selena's as they approached the altar. He stood tall, confident, his gaze never wavering from hers. Selena's heart pounded in her chest as she stood beside him, the weight of the moment pressing against her. She had been prepared for this, but nothing could have prepared her for the sheer power of it. The bond between them, already strong, deepened as the ceremony began. The room fell into an eerie silence, the only sound the chanting of the elders. Darius reached for Selena's face, his fingers brushing against her skin, sending a shiver through her body. The bond flared, stronger than it had ever been. She could feel the magic flowing between them, as if the entire world had shifted. The ancient magic of the Lycan people surged through her, entwining their souls. Then, Darius spoke the words that would seal their fates forever. "By the power of the moon goddess, I claim you as my true mate." His voice was soft but firm, carrying the weight of centuries of tradition and power. The moment the words left his lips, the room seemed to explode with light. The energy between them was palpable, a living thing that stretched out beyond the altar, engulfing the room in a blaze of power. Selena gasped as the magic swirled around them, a tide of warmth and light that filled her veins. She felt herself drawn closer to Darius, felt his power flowing through her like a lifeline. She was no longer just a woman standing by his side. She was his Luna, his true mate, bound to him in a way that transcended the physical. And then, in the final moment of the ceremony, Darius leaned forward and pressed his lips to her neck. His teeth grazed her skin, and she gasped as the final mark was made, the mark that would forever bind them together, the mark that declared her as the Luna of the Lycan King. As the ceremony ended, and the light slowly faded from the room, the weight of the moment settled over them all. The room was silent, and for the first time, Lucas and Lily stood at the center of the gathering, forced to witness the rise of someone they had once known as weak. Lucas stood stiffly, his gaze locked on Selena and Darius. His eyes flickered with emotions she couldn't quite place, but regret seemed to dominate them all. The bond between Darius and Selena had been sealed in front of him, and he had no choice but to acknowledge it. Lily, too, was silent, her face a mask of indifference, but Selena saw the flash of uncertainty in her sister's eyes. She had lost, too. The irony of it all struck Selena in that moment. Lucas had rejected her for Lily, but here they were, standing in the shadow of her rise. It wasn't just a personal triumph. It was a victory over everything they had tried to take from her. Lucas tried to approach her after the ceremony, but Darius's presence was a constant reminder that he no longer had any power over Selena. He tried, again and again, to meet her eyes, to say something, anything, but it was too late. She had already moved on. The final humiliation for Lucas came when Darius turned to him, his eyes filled with a cold, unyielding power. "You were wrong to reject her, Lucas," Darius said, his voice carrying the weight of his authority. "You had the chance to claim her, and you threw it away. She's mine now. And there is no place for regret in the world of true mates." Lucas's face drained of color as the words hit him. Selena watched as he bowed his head, defeated, the weight of his failure pressing down on him. Lily, at his side, was forced to watch as the woman Lucas had once rejected became the Luna of the Lycan King. As the ceremony came to an end and the guests began to filter out, Selena remained by Darius's side. She could feel the shift inside her, the transformation that had taken place. She had once believed that her future was tied to Lucas, that her worth was defined by the bond they were supposed to share. But now, standing at Darius's side, she realized just how wrong she had been. Her worth had never been tied to Lucas's approval. Her worth was her own, and Darius had seen it before anyone else. He had chosen her, not because she was his second choice, not because she was the last option, but because she was the one who was meant for him. Selena stood beside him, her heart steady, her resolve clear. This was her future. She had not just survived her rejection, she had risen from it, stronger and more determined than ever before. As Selena looked out over the council hall, she realized something profound. Her journey had not been about overcoming Lucas's rejection. It had been about finding herself, about realizing her own strength and power. And now, with Darius beside her, she was ready to lead. She wasn't just his Luna, she was his equal. And with him by her side, there was nothing that could stand in their way. Comment, true mates, if you stand with Selena's rise to power. The sun had barely risen over the estate, casting long shadows across the grounds as Selena stood on the balcony, looking out over the vast expanse of the Lycan kingdom. The air was crisp with the promise of a new day, and for the first time in months, she felt at peace. This was the life she had fought for. This was her future. Darius stood beside her, his presence solid and reassuring, a constant reminder of how far she had come. The bond between them had only deepened since their public declaration and the bonding ceremony. She had never felt more connected to him, not just as his Luna, but as his true mate. They had weathered the storm together, and now, as the morning light bathed them in its warmth, she knew there was no turning back. They were a united force, powerful in their love and their shared vision for the future. Today marked the beginning of something new, not just for Selena, but for the entire Lycan kingdom. The council had acknowledged her as Darius's equal, not just his mate, but the woman who would stand at his side and lead their people with strength and grace. It was a heavy responsibility, but one she embraced fully. She had fought for this moment, not just through the pain of rejection, but through every trial that had brought her here. The council chamber was filled with alphas, elders, and respected leaders from every territory in the Lycan world. The room was more grand than it had ever been, adorned with banners of every pack, their emblems representing the unity that had come from Darius and Selena's bond. This was more than just a meeting. This was a moment of affirmation, a declaration that the Lycan world was changing, and that Selena would play a central role in that change. Selena stood beside Darius, her posture regal, her confidence unwavering. The elders had already spoken, and now it was time for the final vote. Each alpha present had to publicly recognize the bond between Selena and Darius, affirming her place as the Luna of the Lycan King. When the moment arrived, Darius stepped forward, his commanding presence filling the room. He turned to face the council, and his voice rang out, strong and clear. "I claim her not only as my Luna, but as the rightful queen of our territories. Selena Moonshadow, my true mate, will lead with me in unity and strength. There is no force in this world, no rejection, no betrayal that can break the bond we share." The room went silent, the weight of his words sinking in. Every eye was on Selena as the alphas and council members watched with bated breath. And then, the first alpha stood. His voice, deep and authoritative, echoed through the chamber. "We recognize the bond between you, Darius Vale, and Selena Moonshadow. We recognize her as your equal, your mate, and the future of the Lycan Kingdom." One by one, each leader stood, some nodding with approval, others with solemn respect. When the last alpha rose and placed his hand on his heart, the council's decision was made. Selena had been accepted. Not just as Darius's mate, but as the Luna of the Lycan King, the woman who would share in the leadership of their people. As the council adjourned, the atmosphere shifted. The tension that had once filled the air was replaced by something far more powerful. It was a sense of unity, a shared vision for the future. The alphas, now fully behind Selena, recognized her strength. They understood that she was no longer the woman they had underestimated. Darius stood beside her, his hand on her waist as they made their way from the council chamber. The moment they stepped outside, the energy between them surged. "I told you from the beginning that I would help you find your place, Selena." Darius's voice was low, but there was a pride in it that filled her chest with warmth. "You've already proven yourself to be the true Luna. Now, it's time to make sure the rest of the world knows it." She turned to look at him, her eyes full of gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you." He smiled, the corners of his mouth lifting in that way that always made her heart skip a beat. "You've always had the power within you, Selena. You just needed someone to see it." They walked together, hand in hand, through the estate. The estate that was now as much hers as it was Darius's. The life she had once dreamed of, only to have it slip through her fingers, was now a reality. But it wasn't the life she had imagined with Lucas. It was something greater. As they reached the gardens, Selena paused and looked out at the vast land that stretched before them. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over everything. "Do you think we can truly change the kingdom, Darius?" she asked, her voice soft, yet filled with determination. He turned to her, his eyes fierce with conviction. "We already have." That night, as the moon rose high in the sky, Darius and Selena stood together on the balcony of the main tower. Their bond had been tested, their resolve strengthened by every challenge they had faced. Now, as they looked out over the land they would rule together, it was clear that their reign would be one of strength, unity, and undeniable power. Darius's hand rested on Selena's, his thumb brushing gently against her skin. They were more than just a king and his Luna now. They were partners in every sense of the word, bound not just by duty, but by love, by respect, and by a shared vision of what the future could be. "We will lead together, Selena," Darius said, his voice steady and filled with purpose. "Our reign will be one that brings true change, and together we will ensure the kingdom thrives." Selena nodded, her heart full of pride. "I will stand by your side, now and always. Together, We will create a kingdom where everyone is treated fairly, where no one is left behind. She looked out at the vast kingdom that stretched before them, the night air cool against her skin, and she knew in her heart that this was only the beginning. She had claimed her place by Darius's side, and together they would carve their own path, a path of strength, unity, and justice. The future was theirs to shape. Thank you for listening to this story. If you believe in standing for justice, equality, and claiming your true power, hit subscribe. Only those who believe in standing strong against rejection and seizing what's rightfully theirs will follow this journey. Comment, true power, true love, if you believe in a bond that can change the world.